This is the Hiking Through Life podcast. We've all been gifted a journey called life. Let's see where the journey leads us today. Welcome to the Hiking Through Life podcast. I'm Andy.
And I'm Sarah.
And on today's journey, we talk with Matt and Zach about the North Country Trail. They discuss what the trail is. A majority of this podcast focuses on the North Country Trail within Minnesota itself, and some of it is about the Arrowhead reroute, what that means for the trail, and some of the trail, there are gap areas in which trail needs to be built. And so Matt and Zach kind of touch on those areas and what's kind of upcoming for the trail.
We also talk about trail work. One of the goals that we have for 2020 is to get out on the trails and give back to the trails. We've always talked about giving back to the trails, but we went to a presentation that they were giving at Midwest Mountaineering about the trail, and it motivated us to get out on the trail this coming year, and that's where we got connected with them.
Yeah, we attended a couple of presentations that Matt led at the Midwest Mountaineering Expo this past fall, and we learned about the Arrowhead reroute. It's actually pretty cool now that it's going through the Arrowhead because you get to see a lot of that beautiful north shore of Lake Superior, plus the Boundary Waters. And I actually hiked the entire Superior hiking trail this past fall and was fortunate enough to hike it while it was now part of the North Country Trail. So if you want to get involved with the trail, we will have a link to the North Country Trail Association's website in the description of this episode. And Matt will talk a little bit more about how you can get involved, what kind of opportunities there are to volunteer with either the trail organization or on the ground and as a part of the trail, whether it's maintaining, constructing new trail, etc.
So enjoy this podcast, and maybe you'll get out and do some volunteer work or plan this for your next thru hike. Tonight we are joined by a couple people who are associated with the North Country Trail. Thank you so much for being on our podcast tonight, you guys.
Thanks for having us.
Yeah, before we get started and dive into the trail, why don't you just tell us who you guys are and kind of your backgrounds associated with the trail. Why don't you start, Matt?
All right. So my name is Matthew Davis, and I work as the regional trail coordinator for the North Country Trail Association. I've been here for 13 years, and I live in Detroit Lakes, Minnesota. And right now, my region of the trail is North Dakota and Minnesota. But when the calendar flips to 2020, I inherit the state of Wisconsin as well. My colleague Bill Menke is retiring, and so I get the challenge of trying to fill his big shoes. And Bill's kind of an institution on the North Country Trail. He actually worked for the National Park Service as the trail manager for years. Before that, he worked for the Forest Service, and he's worked for the association ever since I've been here. So yeah, definitely big shoes to fill, but I've learned a lot from Bill over the years. And just a little bit more about me, I'm originally from Connecticut. I grew up really close to the Tunxus Trail, which is a long-distance hiking trail in Connecticut, and grew up also close to the Appalachian Trail and went to college in Maine. And I had a professor, a guy named Dave Field, who was I think he's been volunteering on the Appalachian Trail in Maine for like 60 years. And I think he started when he was like 14. And he introduced the idea of joining the Appalachian Trail Conservancy and kind of planted the seed of hiking the Appalachian Trail. And so I did that starting in 1998 and finished it in 2001. And pretty much ever since, I've been involved with long-distance hiking trails. And I've met some wonderful folks, folks like Zach, who are really just involved with this trail because they love trails and they love other people who love trails. And it's such a neat community to be a part of. And so I'm definitely blessed.
So just getting out and hiking has been such a huge thing for me. In, I think it was 2006, my kids and I started the Minnesota State Parks hiking club where you go back on each trail. Each park has a trail, and they've got a password back out there, and you write down the password, and then you get a patch for 25 miles, 50 miles and stuff. So it took us 6 years, and we finished it. Did every park in Minnesota. So that was a really cool experience, as watching the kids grow up as we're just knocking them off, going, the state is so diverse that it was really cool to get back in there and seeing the prairies, the hardwoods down in the Mississippi Valley, of course, the North Shore, where we grew up. And that's kind of where the passion took me, after doing the SHT, did the border route, did the KEC, all that part of that Arrowhead reroute. I've hiked that over the years. And just, after you hike it, you get so much out of it. It's really fun to give back to it by doing volunteer work. Over the years now, I've got 6 campsites on the SHT that we adopt. I've got on the elite latrine digging squad, so we go out and we dig the latrines, and that's where people are like, whoa, you're like the Green Berets of the volunteers, on the latrine digging squad. So
The A-team.
Yeah, the A-team. It's cool.
Yeah, because those are some pretty deep holes you got to dig.
In November, we went out for a master's education in latrine digging, learned how to bell the bottom of it to have more capacity and stuff. And it's more than just digging a hole, it's kind of cool getting out there and doing that. And people, the really cool thing is when you run into hikers out there when you go to do your campsites or something, they're like, whoa, what are you doing with all that stuff that you're carrying, and you tell them what you're doing, they're really appreciative, so that's always really rewarding when even people are there at the campsite using it and you're in there doing your stuff.
Yeah, and I'll just echo that, that is a pretty cool experience. My wife and I, we've got 4 kids, and we adopted a section of the North Country Trail in Itasca State Park, and we've been doing it ever since my oldest 2 were 5, and they're now almost 13. And it's the same thing, people, when we started, we tell them what we were doing, and they're like, your kids can't walk that far. That's like child abuse. And we said, not child abuse. They had a great time. They enjoyed it. Kids, 5-year-old kids can hike 5 miles.
Right.
Most adults don't think they can hike 5 miles, but, we may have had to bribe them with M&Ms, for the last mile, or, hey, we'll stop and get ice cream on the way home, but they loved it. And they continue to love it. My family was out there in October on our section of the trail, and it's just great to hear your kids talk about our section of the trail. I don't know if there's anything better, as a hiker and as a parent, to hear your kids have that sense of ownership, of this trail that, they want to give back because they've had some fun on it. And, as somebody that works for the North Country Trail Association, we need, more stories like that. We need more younger people, more families to get involved, because most of our volunteers are in that 55 to 80-year-old range, and some of them have literally been volunteering, like it's a full-time job, and they're getting tired, and we need more folks to kind of step in and shoulder some of that burden and, continue this, well on into the 21st century.
Pretty cool that you guys can volunteer with your families, so you kind of make it a volunteer trip but also like a family fun camping trip, it sounds like.
Yeah, I think it's when they're younger, because when they get about 11, then they kind of like, oh, do we have to do that again? But then when they hit about 16, then it kind of comes back, and I think it kind of hits them like, oh yeah, this is something that's really cool and important and that we like to be doing. So there's always this kind of that preteen era, at least for mine, that kind of wore off a little bit.
Yeah, totally.
But otherwise when they were little, it was, it's our campsite. It's Pin Creek is our campsite. It's been our campsite since 2006 or whatever that was that we started.
Can you kind of talk about how your kids got involved originally when you were volunteering with them?
Well, I don't know. It was just, hey, we're going to adopt a campsite. This is what we're doing this weekend. We're going to go hike in. Our campsite's about 2 miles from the trailhead at Silver Bay. So it's about a 4-mile in and out. It's, you got kind of one big climb right away and then a big descent, then across a big old muddy spot and then up again. And it's kind of cool is through the years, we know every little spot. And we've got little places like when you come up that second mountain, there's a spot we call the resting rock, because that's where we always kind of stop and get something to drink and rest for a little bit. And then there you go around the corner, and there's the big view where you look over the little lake, and you kind of go down into this lower area, and you come back up, and there's the hollow rock, because you kind of step on it and it sounds all hollow. And then there's a spot where I fell off a couple of years ago. It's kind of a 6-foot rock, and for some reason, I've hiked this thing probably 30, 40 times in my life, between volunteering and just going out hiking and backpacking trips. I don't know, I lost my balance, and all of a sudden I fell off this rock backwards. It was one of those, like, boom, I landed, my glasses fell out. That was the worst thing that happened. All of a sudden, like, oh, I can't find my glasses for about half an hour, and I almost had to crawl out. But anyway, there's that spot, and there's the slanted meadow, and there's all these different places that we always have these memories of stuff that happened on every part of this 2-mile spot. So over the years, we've got great memories. We've got the time it was like 90 degrees and we're running out of water, and we're just like, oh, how much farther, or we had another time when it was raining the whole time. We have a time we came in and there was a bear cub in the campsite. So if we've been doing this for 14 years, I think, times 2, that's 28 times we've gone in and out over all those years. So that's a lot of memories.
And then so with the North Country Trail, it sounds like you've done lots of volunteering in a few areas. How did you get involved specifically with the North Country Trail?
It's, it's mostly Superior Hiking Trail, but I've, just Matt's like, hey, we're going to try to recruit some volunteers in the Iron Range. So what can we do? So I've been helping out, with some of the publicity stuff, with some of the, just getting people to know about the North Country Trail is pretty much what I've been focused on so far, is just getting the awareness out there. And, just telling them, like, hey, you like the Superior Hiking Trail? You like the Keck? You like the border route? That's all part of the North Country Trail now. And, hey, look at this. It extends into Wisconsin, to Michigan, to Ohio, to Pennsylvania, to New York. You can go up to North Dakota, and people are, whoa, really? Like, yeah, just get on the trail, hike this way. You're going to be in North Dakota eventually. Hike that way. You're going to go into Vermont.
It goes through a lot of states, it sounds like, but I think a lot of people just don't know what exactly it is. So can you guys just give a little bit of background about the North Country Trail and how old it is and how its popularity has been going up over the years?
So the North Country National Scenic Trail was designated by Congress back in 1980. I think it was the same day as the Ice Age Trail in Wisconsin. And it's administered by the National Park Service, but it's built, maintained, promoted, and protected by volunteers affiliated with the nonprofit North Country Trail Association. And we kind of operate through local chapters, but also affiliate groups like the Superior Hiking Trail Association, which Zach is involved with. But one of the interesting things about the North Country Trail, like some of the other long-distance trails, there's kind of like a father figure, a mother figure, somebody that, stood on a high point and said, boy, wouldn't it be cool if, we had this trail going from way over here to way over there. We don't really know who first dreamed up the idea of the North Country Trail. We think it was actually the U.S. Forest Service in Wisconsin, because there was originally a trail across the Schwamigan National Forest in northwestern Wisconsin that was called the North Country Trail. And we think that the Forest Service, somebody in that agency said, boy, it'd be kind of neat to have a trail going across the northern tier of the United States that connected all of the national forest units. There's the Green Mountain in Vermont. There's this teeny tiny Finger Lakes National Forest in New York State, the Allegheny in Pennsylvania, the Wayne in Ohio. There's a couple of them in Michigan, the Schwamigan in Wisconsin, the Superior and the Chippewa, although the Superior wasn't included in the original proposal. And then actually we have the Cheyenne National Grassland in North Dakota. And so it's kind of a neat story. That's really what we think is the genesis of the North Country Trail. And, it's been around for almost 40 years, and we've got about 3,100 miles of trail that's built and on the ground, but our trail is somewhere in that 4,600 miles to probably closer to 5,000 when it's all said and done. So we've got a lot of work yet to be done in those gap areas where we don't have off-road trail. we have a road walk that connects them. And, that road walk can be everything from a designated road walk where we actually have blue blazes on like power poles or street signs or whatever, and people can follow it, to places in North Dakota where we don't have any volunteers and we just publish a route, kind of a suggested route, but really hikers are kind of on their own to get from one trail section to the next. So it's very much a work in progress, but 3,100 miles in 40 years is pretty amazing. It really goes to show what volunteers can do, when they have the support of federal agencies and state agencies and willing private landowners. It's really remarkable. But we, like I said, have a long ways to go. And here in Minnesota, we've got a couple really big gaps. The one that we're talking about in northeastern Minnesota, where we're hoping to build trail over the next couple decades. And then the one in far western Minnesota, which is a big challenge because once you get south of Highway 34 between Detroit Lakes and Park Rapids, the public lands really thin out, and we need a lot of private landowners to agree to host the trail on their land. Whereas northeastern Minnesota, we got a lot of public lands, and even some of the big private landowners like Blandon Paper Company, they're very supportive and willing to host the trail on their land. So, it's really diverse. That's one of the cool things about the North Country Trail. It goes through 5,000-foot mountains in the Adirondacks in New York, goes along the Great Lakes, and then you've got, the Great Northwoods in Michigan and Wisconsin and Minnesota, and then you end up in the Tallgrass Prairie in North Dakota. And at the far western end, you're actually on at the western terminus, feels like you're in the west. So it's, all the way from New England to the west. It's a pretty big trail.
Yeah, I mean, that's it. A few years ago, it was like in 2012, I was working on a project on a bridge on the Spear Hiking Trail, and we were with this a really cool crew, and we were sitting around the campfire at night, and this kid I know that I was working with goes, "Yeah, next year I'm going to through hike the North Country Trail." Like, whoa, really? He said, yeah, it's a dream of mine. I know people who've done the Appalachian Trail, and that's really inspiring. And right when I graduate, I think that's the only time I'm ever going to have. I'm going to go do it. So it's my friend Luke Jordan. He went and he did it. It was really cool. Following along, he put these blog posts together, and when he came through town, I got him a pizza and brought him to a really sweet campsite that I know on McCarthy Beach. This is one of the spots where hopefully the trail will go, and followed along, and he finished it. He started in March and ended up in October. So it was a really cool story, and now he actually works for the North Country Trail. So that was kind of a cool firsthand thing that I was following along when he was doing it a few years ago. And then he wrote a book, and it's a fun read. Every day it's like, okay, get up. Today I did 30 miles or some inhuman thing. He's got his nickname his trail name is Strider, because he's got these long strides. Like, I would look when I go that year, I would go and I'd be on the SHT, and I'd go to the trail registers and find where he had signed, and like, yeah, today I did 25 miles from here to here, and it just, whoa, just some impossible distance that it was so impressive. And I even went over to Wisconsin on the Brule St. Croix Portage, and I found where he had crossed there. There was a trail register there. So that year it was kind of fun to go and find all the different spots where he had signed his name on trail registers and stuff, just to see his progress. So, but yeah, that really kind of inspired me also to kind of get a little bit more involved in the North Country Trail. It's I'm kind of mostly still Superior Hiking Trail, but yet this whole expansion to this big national trail is pretty cool and inspiring.
Yeah.
One more thing that I'll add, that you asked about increasing use of the trail. In 2016, you may remember that the National Park Service celebrated its centennial. We came up with this idea of a program to kind of challenge more people to get out and use the trail. We called it the Hike 100 Challenge. And, we had thousands of people that, went out and tackled that challenge of trying to hike 100 miles. And we kind of set it up, they could do it however they want. They literally could hike the same mile 100 times, or they could do, a 100-mile stretch all at once, or anything in between. And it was so successful. We got so many new people out onto the trail that, we did it again the next year, and we kind of added a hike 50, so that if people didn't feel like they could hike 100, they could still participate. And next year we're going to be doing it again. So I think that's going to be the 5th year. And I should ask Zach. I think he's got all the patches.
Yeah, I got all the patches.
That's put on by the North Country Trail, this challenge.
Yes. Yep. And yeah, it's a lot of fun. This year in 2019, a lot of people have finished the hike with their dog, and will actually send a certificate and a patch for their dog as well. And so we've got all these great pictures of people, proudly standing there with their dog, and holding 2 certificates. And yeah, it's just kind of neat. But, there's really tons of great stories that come out of that. People hike the trail for a variety of reasons. Maybe they had some kind of loss in their family, and going out on the trail is a way for them to kind of, get away from, the distraction of life and be able to think about, people or events or whatever. It just, that's what these national scenic trails are all about, is a way for people to connect with nature and to have a great outdoor recreation experience. And it's really kind of an unconfined, experience. To use the North Country Trail, you don't need a permit. You don't need to tell anybody that you're going out there. You just go out there and, experience it however you prefer, assuming you're not riding a motorized vehicle, because that's one of the few things that are outlawed on the trail. Under your own foot traffic, you're welcome to go out there as you see fit. So yeah, use is definitely increasing, and we're actually seeing more interest in long distance hikers as well. There's probably only about 20 people or so that have hiked the whole thing, but we're seeing more interest. I think 2020, there's maybe 3 or 4 people that we've heard about that are going to try and through hike the trail. And what we're seeing is more people who've done some of the other long distance trails and have kind of fallen in love with the experience, and they kind of see the North Country Trail as the long one. I've cut my teeth on the AT or the PCT. Let's try, a hike that's really as long as both of them combined.
Yeah, and when people through hike it, do you know, have they generally started from the east or the west more so?
I think more people start in North Dakota because, it's maybe a little bit easier in spring or late winter.
Right.
Yeah, you don't have the mountains in the Adirondacks to, now in Vermont to deal with. But still, March in North Dakota can be, anything. It can be spring or it can be winter. Luke, when he hiked in 2013, he had a lot of winter. He did a lot of snowshoeing.
All the way to Ely.
There was, I think the last guy to through hike the trail actually did something ingenious. He started in Cincinnati, and he hiked over to New York, and I think he started in January. And then he went, because I think he was also from Cincinnati, and then he went back to Cincinnati and hiked out to North Dakota. And I met him in the summer. We were out mowing the trail, and he's like, yeah, I'm almost done. And we didn't even know he was out there. Then he wrote a story about, his hike for our magazine. And yeah, to me, that's kind of the best way to do it, because you can start in the warm place on the North Country Trail, and the foothills of the Appalachians. And, you can't really hike too many other places in January on the North Country Trail. The weather can just be too brutal.
Yeah,
Right.
the weather comes, definitely need to consider that when hiking any trail.
Yes.
What about campsites on the trail? Are they pretty easy to come by, or is it kind of make your own campsite on this trail?
It's got both. It has sections where, like the Spear Hiking Trail is a great example. There's 90 some odd campsites. Elsewhere in Minnesota, we've got about 180-mile section between Reamer and basically Detroit Lakes. It's got maybe a campsite every 8 or 10 miles, so not nearly as many. Other places along the trail, we actually don't have any designated camping. One of the challenges that we face is there's some land managers that allow the trail to cross their land, but they're not really too keen on some of the other infrastructure that goes along with a long distance hiking trail, like campsites and trailheads and all that kind of stuff. And so it really does require a lot of planning if you try to do a long distance hike on the North Country Trail, because it's not like some of the other trails where you just go buy the maps, buy the guidebook, and go out there and kind of figure it out on the fly. You really need to do your homework and figure out, okay, in this gap, I can't camp. It's not allowed along the trail, so I need to be able to hike from this campsite on this long gap, and if I can make it into this town, there's a campground in that town. You know, there's a lot more of that kind of situation on the North Country Trail than maybe some of the other long distance trails.
Yeah. And I mean, do you think as the popularity goes up that might change, that there might be more like their towns might turn more into trail towns and there might be more trail magic along the trail? Do you foresee that in the future?
I do, definitely. Yeah, we're already seeing it. You know, towns are starting to embrace, you know, the North Country Trail as an asset. You know, we have a trail town program that, you know, has been around for maybe 5 years or so. And, you know, we're kind of starting that second iteration of really asking the town to do more to embrace, you know, the North Country Trail and to provide some of those amenities. And they're amenities not only for North Country Trail hikers, but, you know, if a town has a campground, that's going to benefit long distance bicyclists, canoeists, you know, really anybody that's enjoying the outdoors, you know, is going to take advantage of those same opportunities. So yeah, we're seeing, you know, more. I think the bigger challenge that we're going to face is those big gap areas where, you know, there's a big gap area north of Lake Ashtabula in North Dakota where there's maybe 100 miles, maybe even 150 miles where we don't have any trail on the ground. And, you know, so there's no designated campsites except for communities that have campgrounds. You know, I think our next step once we have more volunteers involved would be to look at a gap like that and say, okay, you know, what might be a good spot to go and talk to a private landowner about allowing North Country Trail hikers to camp, you know, in their yard. It's already happening. You know, the hikers are just knocking on people's doors as they go, and they're finding, you know, a warm reception because, you know, like in North Dakota, the great example, people are kind of amused and curious as to why people are walking across North Dakota, you know, carrying a backpack. And so, you know, they're generally, you know, pretty welcoming. And so we've had, you know, some good experiences with landowners really, you know, discovering the trail and supporting it by helping hikers.
Right. I think there's a lot of trail magic out there, like in Luke's book. I don't know. I almost wanted to go reread it again, then just keep
Yeah,
track.
do you happen to have the name of that book?
Yeah, it's Thru and Back Again.
Okay.
Luke Jordan. It's on Amazon. You can get it. But you can. I want to go reread it and just tally how many free beers that he got from almost like, and how many pizzas he got, and how many people were like, "Hey, do you want to stay at my place? Crash on my couch?" I bet he probably got 150 beers and probably 80 pizzas, and how many nights people are like, "Oh, cool," because they probably hear about him as heck when you're hiking from North Dakota to Vermont. It's kind of a big thing. And when the word kind of spreads, like, yeah, there's this crazy kid coming through. He's hiking this whole way, and then that small town newspaper will do a thing on him, and then the next one will, and the next one, then also it's like, whoa, check it out. I've ran into through hikers or people trying to through hike a few times actually. There are these two guys I think they were from Michigan. And, I'm just out hiking and all of a sudden, hey, I see these guys and like, I usually ask them when we talk a little bit, like, hey, we through hiking. And usually it's like they're through hiking the Spear Hiking Trail. But every once in a while, yeah, I'm through hike. We're trying to through hike the North Country. And usually it seems like they get into the UP of Michigan in June and those bugs, that's kind of where you really lose the passion for it.
Oh, yeah. Oh, yeah.
It's like, yeah, June in the UP will pretty much suck the life out of you. But I ran into this guy, Al Learned, a few years ago. I was at Crosby Manitou State Park just doing a day hike, and I was at the trailhead just kind of packing up, getting ready to go. And all of a sudden he comes out of the woods, and I had kind of followed him online. I'm like, hey, Al, how's it going? He's like, well, you know who I am? I'm like, oh, yeah, trail celebrity, man. It's like, whoa, that's kind of cool. he was kind of startled that I knew who he was. But I knew he was kind of in that area. Just you follow online and where these thru hikers are. Yeah, he was kind of shocked that I knew who he was. But yeah, I think there's I think there's a lot of trail magic out there. It seems almost everybody I hear. I ran into guys through hiking the spear hiking trail there from Iowa, and they were at our campsite when we were doing maintenance one time, and they were asking all these questions and stuff. And they had I saw their big pile of garbage, this bag that they had. I'm like, hey, do you want me to bring that out for you? Oh, cool, thanks. We've been hauling all this, like 9 days worth of garbage. Like, yeah, no problem. I'll bring it out. So I think people tend to do that for people, especially when you see them. They look so worked,
Yeah, I would just say that, our volunteer community, prides itself on helping hikers because they just like seeing people out there using the trail, whether it's a day hiker, a family, but long distance hikers in particular, because I think they recognize that, long distance hikers kind of help us, be more like some of those other trails that we share that National Scenic Trail designation with. And so, like Zach was saying, that word spreads across the trail, and the chapters say, hey, that long distance hiker's coming our way. Who can go out and meet them, at the trailhead, or who can invite them, home, or who can give them a ride, or, whatever. And so it's kind of that, Red Plaid Nation rolling out the welcome mat to, these long distance hikers. And I'm convinced that if somebody hiked the North Country Trail, they could literally spend every night in somebody's house if they wanted to. And that sometimes can be a challenge is, if a hiker is not out there for that reason, we can kind of be a little overwhelming.
Yeah.
Just because, we love to help folks, and, we love to have their experience be, improved by, helping them out.
That kind of like warms my heart because I like love trail community, but like the idea of a whole through hike to me and just being on the trail constantly sounds rough. So maybe this is the trail for me to through hike.
Yeah, there you go. So the last lady, Annie Nelson, she hiked, I think, about 1,400 miles of the trail this year, and she started in the northern lower peninsula of Michigan at our annual celebration, and she hiked, I think, all the way to a day into the Kekakabik Trail. So she got into the Boundary Waters, and then she realized that, she was sick and she needed to get medical attention, and so she got off the trail there. But her plan was to hike half of the trail, starting roughly in the middle in Michigan. She was attempting to go all the way out to North Dakota. To me, that's a great way to do it, because one of the challenges, like Luke hiked 25 miles a day for 6 months. That's what it takes to hike the North Country Trail, and that's just overwhelming. Yeah. Even with light gear, that's just a long time to be out there. Like Luke was, what was he, Zach, like 22?
Yeah, 22, 23,
Yeah. His body was starting to wear down at the end. And so, it's just a difficult thing. If you were going to hike it, an average, like 15 miles of the day, it's something like 11 months of the year you're going to be out there. So, the scale can be overwhelming.
Yeah, that is very overwhelming. I mean, no one really has that's an entire year basically.
Yep. Yep.
So, how about all these volunteers that are doing all these amazing things on this trail? How does one get involved with volunteering, and what kind of volunteer work specifically can they do?
Yeah, that's a great question. So I will share our website, which is just northcountrytrail.org, and we've got a tab on there. It's at least current now. I think we're going to have a new website coming out sometime soon, but I'm guessing there's still going to be a prominent tab for volunteers. So if people click on volunteers on our website, you can read more about, what volunteers do. But really this part here, volunteers are the heart and soul of the North Country Trail, which is really true of all of the long distance hiking trails all across the United States. Without volunteers rolling up their sleeves, we wouldn't have nearly the hiking opportunities that we're able to enjoy in the United States. So there's ways that people can get involved. The first step, the easiest one, is they can fill out a volunteer interest form, where basically you just share your contact info like if there's an area of the trail that you might be interested in getting involved in, you can specify that. That'll go to headquarters, and then usually they'll send that out to somebody closer to where that person lives. And then we'll reach out and see, okay, what kinds of things does this person want to do? Where do they want to volunteer? And trying to put them in touch with, the local chapter or a project that's in their backyard. Basically try and be that matchmaker between what they want to do and the opportunities that we have. And really, that's the beauty of the North Country Trail. And like I said, all of the trails really, no matter how old somebody is, no matter how, capable they are of swinging a Pulaski for 8 hours a day, no matter what special skills they have, there's a great way for people to get involved and to make a difference. We've got people who don't do any physical work on the trail, but they go out and they talk to private landowners and, get permission to build a new trail and make sure that existing landowners are happy with the trail and there's not, problems that we need to address. So really anybody that has an interest, we've got people that lead hikes, we've got people that focus on trail maintenance, we've got people who just go to community events and promote the trail. Like Zach was talking about going to the Outdoor Adventure Expo. That's kind of like trail promotion, with a fire hose. You meet, thousands and thousands of people and get to talk to a lot of folks about, the trail. And so that's kind of exciting. But, we've got opportunities for people to get involved one day. We've got opportunities for people to adopt their very own section of the trail and go out, 3-4 times a year and do all the maintenance. And then we've got opportunities for people to do special things like, going on a week-long canoe trip in the Boundary Waters to help clear part of the CAC or the Border Route Trail, which is, probably some of the most advanced. And then, Zach can probably talk a little bit about some of the cool things he's done as a volunteer on the Spear Hiking Trail, because they've got really one of the best volunteer programs of the entire North Country Trail.
Yeah, it's kind of the same type of thing where on the SHT, on their website, you can sign up, to get emails for volunteer things. And it's kind of cool that whenever there's a volunteer opportunity, we'll send out an email. Like I said, when I started getting involved, one of the first thing I did was adopt that campsite. In fact, it was the first campsite I ever camped at on the SHT. So it's always been really special for me and my kids to adopt that campsite. But I always, just keep checking my emails. Every once in a while, it'll be something I'm like, oh, I'm free for the weekend. I'll go out and, hey, we're going to build a bridge over this river, or we're going to take apart a bridge that got washed out by a flood. Did that on the Encampment River a few years ago. Trail building when we extended the trail from Two Harbors down to Duluth and then onward to the Wisconsin border. It was really cool to be one of those last crews in there, swinging the Pulaski and building that section of trail. In fact, a couple of years ago, I think 2 years ago, I went and I hiked that last stretch again. And I knew exactly that corner on this one knoll that I worked on. I'm like, oh, there it is right here. I remember swinging that Pulaski right here on this spot. All these ferns were really grown up and had to get through those roots and stuff. I always loved doing the Adventure Expo, going there, talking to people about the trail, just telling stories. People will just come up, hey, where's a good spot for a weekend to go? And you can just be like, oh, here's a good spot. I'd go here to here, camp at this spot right here. You'll see this, you'll see that. And then all of a sudden that'll come into a story about, some great weekend that I had. And then, you should go here and blah, blah, blah. And they'll get all fired up and you'll show them the maps and you'll get the guidebooks out and like, oh, but there's another one. If you don't want to go so far north, do this route here. And it just gets people all excited about getting on the trail. And then I always tell them, and then once you fall in love with the trail, then you'll want to get back. And then I kind of give them the volunteer brochure and get them all excited to go and help out. And it's really cool how many people you meet out there doing trail work. And now over the years, you kind of get this core group of us that you see every year. Every spring, we'll do a volunteer weekend in Finland. And we'll get together and go out and clear trail because of the trees that always fall during the winter. We'll go out with one chainsaw sawyer and a couple guys with loppers, and we'll clear a section of trail. But like Matt said, there's stuff for everybody to do. We'll have 3 women that are always in the kitchen at the rec center cooking for us because you get off the trail and, hey, the association will give you food. I'm like, holy cow, we're getting fed. and we get breakfast in the morning before we go out again on that weekend. It's kind of one of these special weekends where you get a lot of work done, so they give you a lot of perks. And every once in a while, somebody will give you a T-shirt or something like that. It says that you're on the elite latrine digging squad, and then people are like, "Whoa, that's so cool."
Because SHT happens, right?
Exactly. So that's what I've really gotten a lot out of, and a lot of friends who I see every year, a couple times a year, that we do the same stuff together. Like, oh, right, we're getting together again and going out and doing this, So over the years, you get a really good friendship, a little core group. We have it's called Hike Fest every year, where we'll get together, and it's kind of the annual get together. There'll be group hikes and stuff like that, and presentations, and they used to always be at Wolf Ridge, where everybody'd stay there, except for my little core group. We stay at the campground in Finland, and we always called the off-campus party because we're and most people actually we're really not. We just sit by the campfire, and we probably stay up just a touch later than the people at Wolf Ridge. But other than that,
You guys prefer to sleep on the ground.
right, exactly. I'm not sleeping in a bed, for crying out loud. Gee. People ask me all the time, "Where's the best place to stay in the North Shore?" I'm like, I don't know. I don't sleep there inside. How do I know?
Right.
So,
You can tell people the trail and the sites, but
right, I know great campsites, but I don't know what a hotel to stay in. So, but yeah, it's so rewarding getting out there and helping out. And so, yeah, when I heard that we need to extend the gap from the end of the Keck to Reamer, it's like right in my neighborhood. So, guess I better help out with that too, huh? It's kind of it's just kind of drawn to it. Like, all right, yeah, we got to build more trail up there. All right, let's do it.
and so
And
with
we're
building
hoping that, like,
oh yeah, sorry. Like with building that part, is there like specific weekends you guys have planned to go out and build that section of the trail?
we're getting to that point. This map that I have up here kind of shows the Arrowhead reroute, and it kind of is in a variety of states. We have a chapter in Grand Rapids that's been active for the last 10 years or so, and it's kind of a funny story. I worked with some partners up there, and we actually got some money from the Itasca County Trails Task Force to do some outreach, and we got this chapter going, and we were all excited and saying, well, any day now Congress is going to pass this legislation, and it's going to be the official route of the trail, and you guys will be able to go out there and build new North Country Trail. Well, it didn't happen until this spring, so that chapter has been kind of like in this weird limbo state. But they've built some trail north of Grand Rapids on some, there's some land owned by the University of Minnesota and Arbo Township, and I guess that's the two big ones. And it actually connects with the city trail system in Grand Rapids. And so they've built, like 3 or 4 miles, and now that, that's the official route, we'll be able to fill out the paperwork and get that certified, as an official part of the North Country Trail. But they've also started over the last year scouting and flagging route southwest of Grand Rapids, heading down towards Reamer in the existing trail in the Chippewa National Forest. And that one, I think, is going to be the first place that we start building, new official North Country Trail from scratch. That stuff in Grand Rapids or north of Grand Rapids, we were kind of building it as the Prairie River Trail because part of it goes along the Prairie River, with the idea that once Congress passed that legislation, it would become, an official part of the North Country Trail as kind of like a pre-existing trail. But that stuff southwest of Grand Rapids through Cohasset, down across a lot of Blandon land and Itasca County land and some state of Minnesota owned property, that's going to be new trail that hopefully we'll be able to start building next year. One of the challenges with this fact that Congress passed this legislation, we have all this new trail to build, we're still kind of operating on a shoestring budget, and the National Park Service, which is responsible for the trail and has to do a lot of the administrative and behind the scenes stuff, they still only have a staff of 2.5 people right now, and they cover all 4,600 miles, 8 states. And so they're not really able to do the work that goes into, figuring out where we're going to put 150 miles of new trail. And so we're now really trying to have some of those conversations with local partners, the Chippewa National Forest, the Superior National Forest, a planning organization like Arrowhead Regional Development Commission, to try and figure out what do we need to do and who can do what and what resources do we have available, because we can't just go out there and build trail. There's certain things that have to happen. We need to make sure that we're not damaging cultural resources or threatening, sensitive plants or animals. And so, there's kind of that behind the scenes work that needs to happen. And we're trying to figure that out so that our volunteers can get out there and do what they love to do, which is, building the trail and then maintaining the trail that we get. Our volunteers in general don't like the bureaucracy. And so that's kind of one of the roles that I play as a staff person, is to kind of be that middle person between our agency partners and their bureaucratic processes and our volunteers, just to try and make sure that there's two-way communication going back and forth and that the train is heading down the track. And ultimately, we'll reach that train station, which is building new miles of trail. So there's actually a ton of stuff that goes into, building trail, and some of it's boring. But, we just try and soldier through that boring stuff to be able to get to that part of digging in the dirt and building the trail.
Yeah. Wow. It sounds like there's so much that goes into it. And I mean, it's just like the amount of people that use these trails, you wonder if people really think about all the work that you guys are doing that goes into it. It's just kind of like mind blowing when I'm listening to you talk about all this.
It is, yeah. Just as an example to kind of illustrate how things can get really complicated, when we were building the North Country Trail in Tamarack National Wildlife Refuge, it was the first National Wildlife Refuge that the North Country Trail was going through, and we had to do an archaeological survey. Again, it's federal land. The refuge needed to be able to ensure that we weren't going to damage any cultural resources. And so collectively, we kind of scraped together some resources, hired some consulting archaeologists, and they did kind of a two-stage process, but ultimately they went and walked our flag line and kind of did what they call shovel tests along, and they found some stuff, and it kind of forced us to change our route. And in one place, they wanted us to move the route away from a lake shore, and we were like, no, we want to be right along the lake because that's the best place for the trail. Well, that was also the best place for Native Americans to camp, many, many years ago. And so what we ended up doing was figuring out a way to basically build our trail on top of the ground without disturbing the ground. And so it turned out to be this really complicated project, but the end result is this really cool section of the North Country Trail along the shore of Tamarack Lake, where basically the trail is built up. It's not a wooden boardwalk. It's more we laid down fabric, built like this little timber frame, and then filled it with gravel and rock, kind of a mixture. And so it's almost like a structure you would see in a wet area, to kind of armor the trail and raise it up to keep hikers' feet dry. But in this case, it was built that way to protect cultural resources that were in the ground. And so, that project probably took a year, to get from, they found something, to we're building this structure. And so it's just a great example of how this can get really complicated. And, hikers, when they walk across that, they may not appreciate all that went into it. But, one of the things that we try to do is just explain that complexity. And, not everybody, we don't expect volunteers to get involved in all of that stuff. But, if they benefit from the trail in the long run, they can actually help by becoming a member of the organization that's sponsoring the trail, like the Superior Hiking Trail Association or the North Country Trail Association or the Buckeye Trail Association or the Finger Lakes Trail Conference. Those are some of the big ones. The Border Route Trail Association, also here in Minnesota. That just making that donation or writing that check every year really helps give these organizations the resources that they need to be able to do all that stuff to enable the trail to be there on the ground. It's kind of like, Paul Harvey, it's the rest of the story. We all benefit from the hike and from that trail being there, but it's the rest of the story that kind of goes into it. And the other part of the rest of the story is all of the work that volunteers do to maintain the trail. Once we have it, it's great, but if we don't maintain it, in this part of Minnesota where I live, if we don't mow the trail within 2 years, it basically doesn't exist anymore. Mother Nature will just reclaim it. Yeah, there's a lot that goes into it, and there's a role for just about anybody to play in terms of volunteering. But if you don't have the time or the ability to volunteer, you can just join and make a donation and support the work of, the staff that are helping out, volunteers and amazing folks like Zach that are out there, doing the work. Those folks require tools and equipment and training and all this stuff. And it's easier to do that when we have the resources that we need.
Yeah, absolutely. And is there a favorite part of the trail that you guys have specifically volunteered on that you have a really strong connection to? Maybe you, Zach?
I mean, the spear hiking trail is like the center of the universe to me. It's
Yeah.
like the whole thing. Like, people ask me sometimes, like, what's your favorite part of the trail? I'm like, well, I like the part from the Wisconsin border to the Canadian border, which is the whole hiking trail. Yeah, I mean, I do generally most of my time between the Split Rock River and Grand Marais probably, but the whole thing is so special. And I've only done the border route trail one time, but that was spectacular, that section of the North Country. And the Kekikavik, I've kind of have a love-hate relationship with. I've been on there, 3 times. I've finished it twice. I mean, it's such a grueling trail. And I remember when I did it in 2005 or 6, whatever year that was, I said I'd never go on that part of the trail again. And then I did last year. So, never say never, I guess. But I kind of like it more every time. But, the North Country Trail is special. I've hiked the Pictured Rocks National Lakeshore over in the UP of Michigan. That's gorgeous. I love it over there. The Porkies, just south of my mom and dad and my family have a cabin in the Chequamegon National Forest in Wisconsin. The big part of it goes through there. But there's so much of it I haven't hiked, and I'm sure will be just as special when I get around to it. Eventually I'll probably do. My dad's family is from Western Pennsylvania, and it goes right through McConnell's Mill, which is very close to them. And I've actually seen the North Country Trail. I haven't really hiked much of it in there, but I've, looked into sections out there. I'd love to go out there and hike with my cousin. One of my cousins, he's come out and hiked, I think over the years, he's probably hiked about 100 miles of the Superior Hiking Trail with me. So one of these days I'll go out there and we'll do a nice backpack trip out on the North Country Trail in Pennsylvania. And the stuff I've seen of the New York section, I really would love to go out in there and dabble in the Adirondacks and stuff. It's like, wow. So with a trail of that size, there's a lot of cool stuff to do. I can't imagine ever doing anything like Luke did. I think I get about my threshold at about a week or 2 weeks. Eventually I plan to through hike in one fell swoop the Superior Hiking Trail. That'll probably take 3 weeks or so, maybe even more. I don't like to push the big mileage days at all.
Yeah.
Sometimes when I'll go out on day hikes, sometimes I'll bring people out and it seems like they just want to get out of the woods. Like, why are you going so fast? What's the hurry? Why do you want to go home? Like, I like just take my time, maybe take a little nap next to a river or something. I don't know why the big rush to get home is, get off the trail. The point is to be out here in the woods, why?
Exactly.
So I'm not.
You wanna enjoy your time out there.
Exactly. I'm not
Yeah,
it's a hiker anymore. I'm not worried to get out of there.
It's funny you say that, Zach, because I was just watching a video from Annie Nelson's hike, and this was the one I watched today was her finishing the northern end of the Superior Hiking Trail and starting on the Border Route Trail.
Okay.
And she ran into this guy that started in Ely, so he had hiked the CAC and the Border Route Trail, and they met somewhere on the Superior Hiking Trail. And she's talking to him, and she's trying to get trail intel about what's coming up for her. And the guy is like, yeah, I don't know why I'm hiking so fast. He's like, this year, I told myself I'm going to slow down. He said, I bought a fishing license and I'm carrying a fishing pole. Trying to slow myself down, he's like, it's not really working. He's like, I don't know why I keep hiking so fast. It's like I forget that I want to be out here and then I don't want to finish up and go home and go back to work and do all that fun stuff. So
Right.
it was just interesting.
See, that's the whole point. And you shouldn't be in a hurry when you're out there, I don't think. Yeah, I mean, I guess I remember the days of covering miles where you think like, oh, I can get one more campsite in or whatever on a certain day. But at the same time, I don't know. If I get to the top of the hill and I take a breath, like I'm just gonna chill for a while. I don't need to get out of there, Just take your time. If it's getting a little late in the day, oh well, you might have to drive home in the dark. That's not a big deal.
Let me give you one of my favorite spots. There's a spot actually out in North Dakota that I've been helping to mow for the last 10 years or so. It's in Lone Tree Wildlife Management Area, and it's the spot called Teepee Ring Hill. And, one of the reasons why I love North Dakota is I love views. And if you think about hiking in the prairie, what do you get all the time is views. And you can actually hike there in the summer and enjoy it because generally there's a decent breeze. It kind of keeps the mosquitoes down a little bit. But anyways, on this Teepee Ring Hill, it's this, kind of conical shaped hill that, I don't know, it's maybe 150 feet high from the bottom, and you get to the top and it just has this 360-degree view. If you look to the north and the east, there's these two lakes that kind of spread out. If you look to the west, you can see, 20 miles up the Cheyenne River Valley, kind of up towards the headwaters of the river. But anyways, it's called Teepee Ring Hill because at the top there is these huge rocks, like a couple feet in diameter, a ring. And that was I think it was a Sioux campsite. And they had these rocks to hold down the edge of their teepee. And they would camp up there because they could see, again, 20 miles, and they could see if there was an enemy war party coming. And they could get out of the bugs, and they had water just down the way. And then there's this huge boulder, like a glacial erratic on the top. And I'd probably seen it 5 times before I walked over there and looked down. And there's one of those round depressions carved out of the rock where Native American women would have ground grain, ground corn and made flour. And it's just like, it makes it real, this connection that, we're hiking through this landscape that people have been on for thousands of years, and we're no different than them. We may have Gore-Tex and a fancy backpack, but, we're just there to experience, Mother Nature and all the beauty out there. And so it's finding those cool spots where, you can have those kinds of experiences to make connections with other people, whether it be thousands of years ago or, people that were just there the day before you. That's one of the cool things about trails is they connect people, through time and space. And, that's what we try to do when we route the trail, is to find those gems, and the gem could be, a 300-mile section, or it can be that one spot like Teepee Ring Hill, and if we string together enough of them, it provides the type of experience that Congress really intended when it said, hey, this is a National Scenic Trail. Because there's only 11 of them in the country. So we try to keep reminding ourselves every now and again that, hey, this is pretty important. This isn't just some trail. This is, important to the whole nation because Congress created it.
Right. It's a national park. It's just as important as Yellowstone or Yosemite or, anything like that. It's, it's a big thing when you see that Arrowhead, insignia, the shield thing. I mean, it makes you like, whoa, okay, this is pretty cool.
Yeah, all the history and time that goes into it, and I mean all the volunteer work that you guys are doing in it too. It's just, I think just hearing all of this I think so many hikers take those trails for granted. So when you hear these stories and the history behind it, it just really makes it come to life and makes it so much more real and meaningful.
Part of the North Country Trail is telling that story. Who lived here before us? What did they do? And places like this give us an opportunity to weave in some of those stories of, the Great Cutover or Native Americans and early voyagers. There's a piece of the North Country Trail in Wisconsin called the Brule St. Croix Portage that is a historic travelway between the Great Lakes and the Mississippi River. And so Native Americans use that for thousands of years. Early North American explorers, use that same route. And when you hike the North Country Trail now, there's these little monuments along the way that give the name and the date of when some of these famous people traversed. So again, it's another one of those cool spots that gives you the idea that there's a whole lot. We might not have 14,000 foot mountains or, be known all the way around the world as a super famous hiking trail, but we have these cool features that are really worth checking out. And the benefit of, our generally flat landscape is that anybody can go out there. You don't need to be, a young super athlete, like you might need to be on some of the trails out west where you're, climbing to 13,000 feet. We're a more gentle landscape. The glacier kind of left us with that benefit.
Yeah.
It's a lot more accessible.
Well, wow, we've touched on a lot here. I mean, is there anything else you guys wanted to share with people about the North Country Trail?
I would just throw out there that if people are intrigued, a great way to follow kind of our progress is we have a Facebook page that's about the Arrowhead reroute, and it's kind of segued the last year from advocacy, help us convince Congress that this is a great idea, to now, it's going to be the one place where we can keep folks up to date as we, work towards building this new trail in the Gap area. If people are interested in getting involved, like I said earlier, they can visit our website, click on that volunteer tab, fill out that application, and we'll try and find them, an opportunity to get involved. But that Arrowhead Reroute Facebook page is another great way to kind of keep track of, this big project to close that gap in northeastern Minnesota. So that's one thing, and they can just search on Facebook Arrowhead Reroute.
Awesome.
Yeah, I mean, I just like to say that getting involved in trail, anything to do with the trail, if you like hiking, that it's such a rewarding thing to get out there and actually help out. I can't tell you enough how it just, I don't know, it just makes you feel great that you're helping something that means so much, probably to you. I mean, just getting out there and knowing that you maybe built that bridge, or you maybe stopped that campsite, or that you cleared that section of trail. It's just something that at the end of the, going out for a weekend, when you come back on Monday, you take a shower, you get cleaned up, you go to bed, and then you think like, I'm exhausted, but that was one dang good weekend, and I did some good work. So you feel really good about yourself when you're done. And there's a lot of stuff to do out there.
Yeah, and I would just echo to say that, when we build trail or we maintain trail, we're doing it for the long term. Like I always tell, our volunteers when we're building trail that, this trail, the way we build it, it's going to be here until the next continental glacier comes and kind of wipes us all off the landscape. We build it to be sustainable, and we maintain it to provide that good experience. And like Zach said, I don't think there's anything more rewarding than doing trail work, because you typically walk in, you work, and you come out and you get to walk over your own work, and it gives you the best warm, fuzzy feeling to know that you helped, and that, people are going to be walking and enjoying this trail because of, your work. It's a cool feeling.
Definitely.
I do gotta ask, so when you guys would bring your young kids out to do this volunteer trail work, what type of volunteer work were they doing? I mean, were you letting them use the tools?
When they were little, yeah, I'd have them shovel out the fire pits. That's the thing that you can go through. They know to kind of look through and, oh, look there's some tinfoil. We know that tinfoil doesn't burn. We better pack that out. Or, oh, here's some plastic. Here's a big gob of, aluminum cans. Better take that out. But, they get that little shovel. They can dig it out, fill up a bucket. We'll go spread those ashes out in the woods. They know how to hey, go check out, see how that latrine looks. How deep is it? Think it'll last, it'll last till fall. They can look in there like, yeah, that's good. We teach them that's getting a little high, stuff like that. They can use a loppers when they're little. We've got our campsite that we've adopted has a kind of a long spur from the main trail down to the campsite, and they know to think, now that they're big, they really know to lop it out so you're not getting caught on the branches as you're going in. Just make it a nice wide spot. So, when you're in doubt, just chop it, and they know that. But yeah, mostly when they were little, it was a lot of the shoveling and this testing the bench. Oh, and if there was fire rings that weren't the fire ring. Sometimes people kind of go off and make their own tent pad off away from the main group and make their own little fire ring, like, oh, that's a renegade fire ring, let's dismantle that, put some leaves over it so that you can't tell where it was. They can do that when they're young too. They can kind of learn that early, I think.
Yeah, and I just was finding some pictures from my Facebook page. This is the North Country Trail in Itasca State Park, and we got to this spot as a family, and my kids are like, oh my word, we need to turn around, we can't get past this. And literally 5 minutes later, we had it all cleared, and they were like, wow, like, you can do an awful lot of work, with sharp tools and being safe and, not whacking your siblings with those sharp tools. It was such a cool experience. I was telling my wife afterwards, like, I'm so glad that, our kids are to that point now where rather than just saying, hey, sit down, mom and dad are going to take care of this, we can tackle it together as a family. And they really learn from that one tree that, wow, you can do an awful lot with, sharp tools and working safely, because, they got to see it. They got to do it themselves. And, they tell their friends like, hey, we got to do this on our trail, and, it was so cool. And it gives kids a glimpse into what's possible, because I think sometimes we undersell kids on, what they can do, and, kids can do an awful lot. And if we give them those opportunities to, stretch their wings, and yeah, it's a lot of fun.
Mm-hmm.
I've actually got a really good story with mowing the North Country Trail this summer in Itasca that's pretty close to where that picture was. There was a tree that was down, and I was cutting it with my folding saw, and I needed my daughter to sit on one end of it to kind of take some of the pressure off so my saw wouldn't get stuck. And when I finished the cut, like, I was leaning over so far that I totally lost my balance, and I did like a flip over the log, and my daughter is sitting on the other end just laughing hysterically because Dad finished cutting and I'm doing a somersault into the brush.
Yeah.
And we think of that, when we stopped at that spot as a family, like Zach was talking about, these memorable spots that you pass along your section of the trail. Ruthie says, hey, to her siblings, this is a spot where Dad did the somersault into the brush. So, it's those funny moments that sometimes as a parent you kind of have to realize that, hey, we're human and we can goof up, and our kids think it's kind of a neat story.
Right. One other time we were coming out when Jackson was pretty little, and for some reason it seemed like he had, when he was really young, hiking would make everything shake out of him, and he had to, do a little number 2. He's like, Dad, I really have to go. And we're about a mile and a half in. I'm like, oh, can't you make it? No, I really have to go now. I'm like, oh, all right. And so I'm digging in my backpack trying to find my little, my little pooping trowel, trying to find it. I'm like, oh man, I don't know. I can't find anything that we can, I don't think I brought it in this pack. I think it's in our other backpack. And my older son's like, Dad, why don't you use the big shovel that you use for like, oh, it never occurred to me that this giant shovel that I moved out of the way to dig that's not the and like my brain was going like, that's not the pooping shovel, that's the fire shovel. Like, oh yeah, I guess I could. He was like, why don't you just use that one? Obviously.
That's great.
I was just like so specific. Oh no, that's the pooping shovel right there. And anyway, that hike is kind of funny. For some reason, my older son had these baseball gloves, like, batting gloves, and and my younger one was wearing one for some reason. And so we went to go to the bathroom, and he took the glove off. And then we went back on the trail. And by the time we got to the trailhead, it's like, oh no, we forgot. Where's my glove? So we forgot the glove. So that was in the fall of that year. So then the winter comes, boom, and then we have to go back in there in the fall. And we hiked in. We kind of got the sense, it's somewhere along the trail, and there's no real big descriptive spot. But I kind of like thought, I think this is right about the spot where we went in to do to go to the bathroom with the shovel. So I just kind of went back behind a few trees, up over this log, blah, blah, blah. And there's the glove. It was sitting right there. And I'm like, holy cow, I found it. It just kind of got chewed on over the winter and stuff, but there it was. So yeah, I have no idea how I knew in this very nondescript stretch of woods that that's where it was, but something kind of just said, hey, it's right in here. So yeah, it's another one of monumental little moments that you always remember, you know? That's great. That's what it's all about, just making those memories like that.
Yeah, yeah, that totally is what it is about. Well, oh wow, we've touched on so much. This has been super, super awesome, you guys.
Thank you.
Yeah, thanks a lot. Just keep hiking, get out in the woods. Just, it's just walking. That's all it is. And just living out there. That's kind of what I say. Some people are like, oh, you gotta have some, major skills or something like that. Well, no, just you need to walk in the woods. And it's
Just
one of the greatest things.
shoes on your feet and a trail to follow. That's all you need.
So I really like the point that Zach and Matt both made at the very end of the podcast. They mentioned hiking is just walking. It's just putting one foot in front of the other, and you don't need anything special to do it.
One of our favorite yoga teachers once said, "The only thing mandatory in life is breathing. Everything else is optional." Well, that can absolutely be applied to the trail. The only thing mandatory on the trail is your body and the trail. Everything else is optional.
One of the really cool things that I actually just signed up for was their Hike 100 challenge, which is hiking that 100 miles of the North Country Trail over the course of this upcoming year. And they put this challenge on every year just to get people out there and get people on the trail. It's a good way to familiarize yourself with a trail that you may not have, one, either heard of, or two, just haven't really been out and hiked like Sarah and I. We haven't really hiked any portion of this trail other than the Superior Hiking Trail. And we have actually started out on the Superior Hiking Trail before it was even designated as part of the North Country Trail. And this is something that we have as a goal for 2020 now, is to get out and explore more of the North Country Trail.
Yeah, and I think hearing their stories about all the memories that they made with their families on the trail was also really cool, because the more you get out on the trail, the more special it's going to become to you. And it was so clear listening to their stories that there's such a rich history of their family's traditions on there. It's also really cool to hear the history that was on these trails before we stepped foot on them. And that also got me thinking and wanting to be more reflective upon the history of the trails when we're hiking on them.
If you're interested in learning more about the North Country Trail, or how you can get involved with various volunteering opportunities, or if you wish to even just make a donation, go to northcountrytrail.org, and they have tons of information out there. Plus they have their volunteer tab where you can go and sign up to be a volunteer. And they also have various Facebook groups. One of them that Matt had mentioned is the Arrowhead Reroute. So if you're interested in the work that they are doing with the Arrowhead Reroute that was recently designated this past year, go to that Facebook page and like it and follow along with the various progress that they're making with the Arrowhead Reroute. We'll have links to everything in the description of this episode.
All you need is shoes and a trail. Get out there.
You don't even need shoes.
Thanks for listening. We love sharing these stories with you through the Hiking Through Life podcast, and we're so grateful that you listen to this podcast. If you'd like to support the Hiking Through Life podcast further, we have these amazing new t-shirts and water bottles. The t-shirts come in 4 colors, and the water bottles are perfect for trails, adventuring, or daily use. Consider checking them out at hikingthroughlife.net/shop.
Use the code PODCAST and receive 10% off your first order.
You've been listening to the Hiking Through Life podcast. Peace, love, and hike through life.